those of you in the States, this is Steve from ADISA on the latest edition of ITAD 15. I'm joined today by John Spagnuolo, who's the president of IQ Reseller, and we're going to be talking all about ITAD process. So welcome, John, and thanks for coming.
Steve, thank you for inviting me to do this.
Brilliant. John, for those of you who don't know you, just talk a little bit about your background and how you got into the ITAD industry.
Yeah, I love to. It's quite interesting. I got into it almost, I don't want to say by mistake, but almost by picking up the phone at the right time. I got my first degree back in 2011, right in the heart, like the recession. Michigan got hit hard, and I needed an internship. And this guy from this ITAD company here called me up and said, "Hey, you know what? This you came across my desk here. Why don't you come in and see?" And I remember going, I had no idea what ITAD was, computer recycling, data sanitization. I had no idea. I was just a young kid at the time, really. And he takes me back and showing me it. And I'm seeing this big, massive warehouse just full of used IT equipment, seeing this long conveyor belt line with a bunch of people doing certain things. It's almost like a manufacturing line, but kind of in the reverse sense of the items were already manufactured. At this point, you're just now trying to actually discover what those were. And he was kind of explaining it all. And they had this process built out, which was really intriguing. And then from there, I started there. After the internship, I was offered a job, worked my way up through within sales, selling to Fortune 100, Fortune 500 here within the Midwest. So really getting to know the ITAD services with it, and worked my way up there to doing a number of things and actually running the company at one point before I left.
So let's explore that, because the sort of the introduction to us is really interesting, because it's almost from the ground floor up to a degree. You mentioned process and production line process. What is an ITAD process?
Yeah, so really, let's kind of it's kind of a twofold question here, almost, or not a question, but what I want to say is, one is what actually is a true ITAD as well, because I think that's a term that's kind of really thrown out there loosely as well. You can acquire a product from an ITAD, but that's not doing ITAD services. What a true ITAD is part of the IT asset lifecycle circle with it. So it's part of the lifecycle management, where you're performing services for your customer that is getting rid of the end of use of these particular assets within the refresh cycle. So you're performing a identify process, or trying to audit the equipment, a wiping service, as well as possibly a break fix to either redeploy or try and capture maximum value for those items for your customer at that point, to extend the life of the equipment. If you can't extend the life, of course, then you need to properly recycle that in a environmentally friendly way for your customer as well.
So you mentioned, and I love the phrase lifecycle management, because, and true ITAD is a phrase I've not heard before. It's when you're looking at the ITAD and the value that you bring your customers, it used to just be collecting old equipment, making a problem go away. What you're suggesting now is that this looks much more professional. It looks far more that it's driven by the current desire, I guess, to be sustainable. Does that mean that the processes that an ITAD must undertake within its facility have evolved? Is this very much a process-driven industry?
Absolutely. The industry is maturing way more from where it was to where it's at. And a process drives the entire organization. So you need to have a process in place. If you're going to deliver these types of services and solutions to the end user that you're getting the product from, you have to have the right process in place. You have to know every step of the way. You have to be able to provide that secure chain of custody, whether when you're from the time of pickup to auditing to wiping it. When you're thinking about how you're going to do that, though, is there's several things that you have to think of when it comes to a process. Is first and foremost, always when I'm looking at an ITAD or working with an ITAD, is what's the culture of the company? Most don't ever think about the culture of the company. If you design a process and nobody likes the process or nobody understands the process, your process is already broke, and you're gonna have a trickle down effect to where you know it's not gonna work well with the software tools that you have. The automations aren't going to be correctly for the two software pieces talking together. You're going to have non-conformities when you go through your audits for any regulatory needs that you have to meet. And also knowing that though too is you may design a bad process at first. Don't kick yourself in the pants on that, or be upset, or be bummed about that, because adjustments can always be made within a process as well. No process is the same from today versus 365 from today as well. Is you always tweak and bring adjustments to your process.
If I can, I'm just going to give you a little bit. I know I'm going off piece because we chatted just before. You mentioned culture, which I think is really, really important. We, as a certification body, we are UCAS accredited, so the UK Accreditation Service, which means as our audit function has been audited quite rigorously, I have to say. At the beginning, I was a little bit of a negative person surrounding this, and I'm the head of the business. And, oh, we have to do this. So it was begrudgingly, and it required a change in my mindset. The culture of the business had to change, because the processes that we felt were being forced upon us were begrudging processes, and therefore they weren't effective. And what we did is that the penny dropped, and all of a sudden we became quite efficient at embedding processes into business as usual. And therefore we didn't even think about it. The business itself became compliant, and we passed our last 2 audits without any findings at all, because we've changed our mindset. And I think for today's call, let's just talk about the culture a little bit more, if we may, because we see where the industry, and going back to a point you made, the maturity of the industry, are we seeing that the culture of the business themselves, the head of the business, is that changing, or are we still back into doing the minimum that we need to get the job done, or are we seeing much more appetite for becoming more professional about ITAD?
No, we're seeing much more appetite. Just to phrase exactly like what you're saying, is companies want to better themselves. They know where they came from by kind of stumbling into it, typically by accident, like some do, like I did, and a lot of others in this industry as well. But they're always asking themselves, am I doing, or what am I doing right now? Is this the right way, or how can I be better? And with that, it's talking to the people on your shop floor as well. Don't just think that you have all the ideas. Actually, truly go out there and talk to the guys on the shop floor. Talk to your auditors. Talk to your sanitization techs. Talk to the people actually doing it, because those are the ones that are doing the hands-on approach too, and they can have some brilliant ideas that can minimize touch points, that can improve your process. And it goes back to what I was saying, adjustments. It's making those adjustments. Other things too that I really want to bring up when it comes to culture as well is, people are the most strongest asset within any ITAD organization, and so that's why culture is so important as well. But you also have to make sure that with the software tools that you're using is that you mold these into the right part of the process, and you have them talking correctly within part of the process. Don't be a believer. Automation is great, but certain things should not be automated as well. A good example of this, and this has been stuck in my head for the last couple of weeks of looking at this. I was at the Lions game here in Detroit. It was a great game. We won too, and I was in the wash closet, and someone said we should not be automating the sinks and soap. And he's exactly right, because how many times you put your hands under there and you can't get the right amount of soap, or you can't get the soap, or the water doesn't turn on after you just lathered up your hands with the soap with it. Same thing goes with software within a ITAD facility as well. Software, you don't want to automate everything. There's certain things you can't use. Like when you really can is get the data diagnostic software talking to your ERP software. Get the data to go in there to make it more of a readable format. Get the wiping software as well to push what has happened, how it was wiped, who plugged it in as well. What was the sanitization method? What was the timestamp that it was wiped? Those are certain aspects that you should be looking at trying to automate, not just also from a process side in the operation side, but look at how can you automate on the front end as well. The front end meaning of when you're providing the services for the Fortune 500 or those larger entities that you're working with, is how can you make their life easy as well? How can you make a pickup request? How can you provide reporting? How can you provide true transparency reporting on a moment's notice to them? Be able to provide the portals and the software to make their lives easy to go and request it. Going through a refresh in these large companies is they're not just refreshing a couple hundred assets at a time. They're typically doing something like I always call it is an evergreen refresh, where it's thousands at a time. So if you can make one simple thing easy on their side, that could save them a whole slew of time, and it makes you become stickier, and you have a better relationship with them as well too.
Let's just explore again the concept of process, because like many, I probably think when I'm talking ITAD about the transaction of ITAD, so I'm talking about vehicles, material handling and things like that. But you bring a front end piece in and also back end, and about making it easy for the customer to do business with you from the front end, and also reporting at the back end, making that process so that they get their reports in a timely way. For you, the ITAD process is far more than just ops. And are you seeing more? And you mentioned you shouldn't automate everything, but some of these processes can be automated to make it more real time from the client. Where are you thinking that you're seeing the best use of automation in ITAD today?
The best use is when you can bring quick transparency and real-time reporting to a customer. That way you are actually showing exactly what's happening to those devices. Going back to this to the start of it, and I was preaching of a secure chain of custody, you're providing a secure chain of custody too. So the more you can be quick and report exactly what's going on, you bring that peace of mind to the asset manager within that company as well, because he's now trusting you with, always assume everything you pick up has live data on as well, so they can see when that's occurring. So make sure that the reporting software is tied in with your client portal, or the ERP has the ability, or the wiping software has the ability to push its reports into the ERP software, which can then push it and gather that data in a clean format and then push it into the client portal as well too. Also, you need to make sure that the reporting is accurate. The only way to make that is accurate is we're all human, we make mistakes, but when you can get two pieces of software, such as a data diagnostics tool and a discovery tool, to talk with your ERP that can be tied to a reporting tool, then you can ensure that is correct information going on. I know there's some things that there's no software there that can tell you exactly cosmetically wrong with it. You still need an auditor at that point. But if you can state the overall exact condition of the components internally, what the components are, and the sanitization method, or what has happened in the device, in eliminate the human factor, you not only make yourself more compliant, you're also making your customer more compliant, and also providing a peace of mind as well.
Transparency is key in all of this, I think. And I think where we're getting from a regulatory perspective, one of the key components for any service delivery mechanism, particularly where data is concerned, is about transparency to the client. You mentioned a couple of things, which I'm just going to put some words in your mouth a little bit here, that the need for some smart systems as the backbone of the business can actually help process become more efficient because it can be automated. But there is still going to be, I know we won't get onto the discussion about AI, but there is still going to be a requirement for humans to take part in this process, and that human process can be controlled by the culture in the business and making sure that people understand the process that they're to follow and the ability that they can have to make a change, but to make an improvement and to enhance a process as they do it day in, day out. To have people engaged in the idea that they are part of this overall mechanism of the business as a whole, rather than isolated. I'm just aware of time because we've got a couple of minutes left here. I mean, you've been in the sector a while and in different roles as well, and you've been very good. And you've not mentioned IQ Reseller once, which is fantastic, John. But in your experience, maybe in this,
educate. You don't have to use our software. Whatever software is that you're using, make sure that they're following this. That's what I truly believe in here.
And I think that's right. And this leads me to my next question, which is, where do you see ITAD? I think ITAD's changed massively in the last 10, 15 years. I've seen a huge amount of improvement, professionalism, and innovation going on. Where do you see ITAD going from a process-driven business in the next, say, 5, 6 years?
We're going to see more transparency. We're going to see more real-time reporting at this point too. We're going to see more trackability come into play. We're going to become a very mature industry, and we're at that tipping point. Like I was saying earlier, Steve, I remember it was Wild Wild West in 2011, and even before that time, it was probably even worse though too. But from my times where we're at, make sure that regulation's great, and I'm going to be a preacher of regulation on this as well, because regulation is only going to drive drive the organizations within this industry to go do better and do the right things with the reporting. There's so much reporting that's going to come for it too, and there's going to be huge drivers and mechanisms on the security side of things, as well as now on the environmental side of things too. I remember probably like 2014, 2015, talking to some companies, environmental was kind of getting there, and then it just kind of crashed back down. And again, security's always been there, and it's always going to be higher on the priority list. But now the environmental is starting to come back, and start to think of everything that you could be saving for the environment when you're thinking at an ITAD. Know that use can be good and repairing can be good. So the repairing service in making these devices last longer is going to be huge within the next 5 to 6 years, I believe, as well.
I think that leads me back to a session I did last week with Andrew Krager as well, which we talked about Scope 3 reporting, which leads into that about how you would actually report back to your customer, which is a process. And there's value, and we haven't talked about value here. There is a value in reporting and timely reporting, I think, from an ITAD's perspective.
There's a huge value, and just real quick on that point too,
Yep.
reporting offers a huge value, which also provides more value to your services as well, which also then creates an opportunity for you to then be able to say, hey, because my service is providing you a value and that peace of mind as well, that there could be almost a charge of that as well. So that's going to present a new business opportunity for a lot of ITADs, to where you can rely more on services as well now, and not just on the hardware revenue, which we all kind of know what's going on.
Yep.
And that's a discussion I want to get into, because everything goes up and down here, I feel like, and just always prepare for the rainy days. But the more this is going to go forward, the more service opportunities that are going to come from this as well, which is going to create much more greater business opportunities as well. So I mean, really, we're still just getting started.
Yeah, and that's a brilliant place to end here. It's only 15 minutes. Said it'd go really quickly. We've covered everything that we said we were going to cover there, and I do want to just finish for my own sake here a little bit, which is to talk about the final point that John said, which is the opportunity for ITAD. Service and value are really, really, really key. And if you're selling a service, you've got to have the outcome consistent. If the outcome needs to be consistent, you need rigorous processes supported by as much automation as you can, because that will help. It won't be the only thing, but it will very much help. And so I think that the maturity of the ITAD sector is going to be driven on good process, efficient process, keeping the costs down, but also building value you can attribute a price to. And that's where the evolution of this industry is going to come from, which is being proud enough to say we're good and we're going to charge. And that's where we're going to evolve, I think. Hey, John, thank you very much indeed. If you can stay on, we'll have a little chat afterwards. We're up over the 15 minutes. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. And John, thank you very much.
Steve,
we'll chat
thanks
afterwards.
for the invite too as well.
It'd be remiss of me not to say I love the Christmas background. So thank you very much for putting me in the December mood.
Appreciate that.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your days.
Thank you.